Okay, so yes, you can call me Leticia. And first of all, I would like to thank the team, this association, for creating a very much needed event and for creating such an amazing community of young women who are trying to have a career and engage with each other and share those experiences, and for letting me introduce the main topic of my PhD dissertation, which was the Valdespino site. So I'm going to be talking about, yeah, you can see, about this location that you can see here on the pictures. So basically, we have to go to the Neolithic transition in southern Iberia, which is a crucial stage because it meant the transformation of the environment as well as the transformation of the relationships that these populations had with the environment, with the resources, as well with other communities. It is marked by the emergence of farming, of herding, of new storage systems, as well as new form of territory organization. And among these, what we call campo de silos or pit field settlements or pit field sites are basically the distinctive expression of how these early Neolithic farming communities managed their landscape and managed the resources that they had. And you can see actually on the picture at the bottom, different sites that have been studied, and they are pit field sites. And in orange, I believe you can see Valdespino sites. Basically, our goal was to understand the landscape and also to see how they manage their resources and how this has evolved during this time from this transition. Our key question was to evaluate the role that Valdespino, that this site, had within a coordinated, broader network, you could say, of different settlements. And to achieve this, we have to characterize not only this site, Valdespino, but also the organization and how all of these communities interacted with each other. And the main problem, well, it was that we need to understand these sites not as individuals, but as different locations that get involved into a bigger network on the side, all the south of the Iberian Peninsula. So now we have provided new perspective on the social dynamics, on the mobility, as well as the relationships in all this area. And as for the, okay, let me say, okay, now, perfect. Now we have adopted a systematic scientific approach. We didn't study the objects just as individual objects with their characteristics, because we focused on the social and economic components that were in these remains. Basically, this approach was grounded by the detailed documentation as well of the 38 pits that could be excavated on Valdespino, even though the team believed that more were still under the buildings around this place, but they could excavate 38. And this approach was also supported by 4 new radiocarbon dates that we could get. This has allowed us to bridge the gap, basically, between the raw data that we have and the social interpretation of all these early communities. Now, perfect. So what have we seen? Well, basically with these 4 dates, we can place Valdespino in this big network of farming communities. It is from the late Neolithic to the transition to the first cooperate Chalcolithic communities. So Valdespino was in fact an established farming community with domestic activities. I had to study a vast record of over 5,000 objects in total. More than half of them were pottery, thus followed by marine shells, particularly clam or Cruditapes degustatus, as well as many lithic tools. Notably, one aspect was the presence of tools that are related to harvesting, to cereals, to food processing as well, and tool production. So this supports that Valdespino was a lived community, that there was a lithic production and pottery production on site. And one striking result in Valdespino is the total absence of human remains and terrestrial fauna remains, whereas these can be found on Jardines de Tempul. You can see on the picture where Valdespino is located and where Jardines de Tempul is located. Jardines de Tempul was a different, it's a different settlement, let's say like that, with a different project, a different team. It was excavated on a different year. We believe it was all basically the same, just different name because it is a different team. But in this site, there are human remains and there are terrestrial fauna remains, not to be found on Valdespino, but they are related. And another significant finding is in Valdespino is the presence of early Neolithic archetypes, such as Almagra decoration, that is a typical decoration from early Neolithic communities in the south of Iberian Peninsula, cardial impression with the shells, and some epipaleolithic tendencies on the lithic industry. With this, what we see, well, first of all, we did the first comprehensive study of Valdespino, where we studied not only the archaeological remains, but also the landscape dynamics and the relationships that this farming community had with all the different communities around this place. Valdespino, as we see, is part of a much more bigger network that was coordinated with the same economic activities. And not only with the radiocarbon dates, but also with the products that we have studied. And the fascinating thing, I believe, is the wide range, temporal range that we find, because we see some materials that are from early Neolithic, but other materials are from late Neolithic and Chalcolithic, as well as the 4 radiocarbon dates. They are from late Neolithic, and the early Chalcolithic. This made us think that maybe there was a shorter, a smaller occupation, or maybe it was the cultural legacy that continued on time. We need to dig a little bit more into this. But our main idea is that these pits, these settlements with over 50 and even 100 of pits, were not just on a storage location. They were part of expression of how these communities, these farmers interacted with the environment, how they managed their resources and interacted with each other, and how the mobility is shown now on this location, on these settlements. And okay, basically looking ahead, well, more studies should be done in order to understand this transition. Additional radiocarbon dates, of course, because we need to know a little bit more of all the bits. There are 38, so we can see which ones were the first, which were later, the use, the reuse, the seasonality, the occupation phase, this early Neolithic, but also some Chalcolithic materials, also used ware, and microscopic studies on lithic tools and on pottery. That can help us to see basically the raw material processing as well as the lithic production. Stable isotope analysis on marine shells, because, well, this location is a bit far from the sea. So we need to see how this community interacted with the resources from the coast, also the seasonality, and as well we can reconstruct the environment, how it was during this time. And lastly, soil micromorphology, in order to see the use, the reuse of the pits and how these were interacted with them. All of these ideas can help us to complete the vision of this Neolithic population, of these early farmers, and how these farming communities established in southern Iberia. And with that being said, I just want to thank you for your time.